Welcome back to the Bitcoin Zodiac. I hope that you are amazing. Happy full moon, full strawberry full moon in Sagittarius. My full moon in my sun sign. So pretty intense one for us Sagittarius. I'm currently traveling. I just arrived in Provence. It's actually my mom's birthday. So yes, my mother is a Gemini. And actually, it's my dad's birthday as well next week. So he's also a Gemini. And yes, for those of you who understand astrology, I am a Sagittarius raised by two Geminis. Um, and it is as wild as you would think it is. If you know, you know. So I wasn't going to do a video actually until I get back home, but because usually the price action over summer for Bitcoin is very vanilla, and even the astrology is a bit, tame, But in June, we've got some pretty spicy astrology coming up. So I wanted to do a video. It was too juicy not to do a video. So here we are. But a quick recap of what I've been up to. I was at the end of last month, I was speaking at the Bitcoin conference in Ireland, in Dublin. Fantastic conference. Dinny and Lawrence put on an amazing conference, really good speakers, and a really good crowd as well. A lot of people brand new to Bitcoin that are really learn. As someone else said, that they've never been to a conference where people sat through taking notes from the very first opening speaker right till the end. And I agree with that. Rarely is there someone at people at a Bitcoin conference that, are grabbed for the whole day and like are taking notes and really eager to learn. There's a lot of like positive masculinity, I have to say, that was there. Obviously, we had our Women in Bitcoin um, panel and full of amazing women, and that was fantastic. It was so lovely to meet them. But there was a lot of people in the audience that were men with young families and that were really there to learn about Bitcoin, um, to really support their young families and for their kids' future and things like that. So super positive. And then there was also the kids. I thought the Bitcoiner kids were really cool as well. So I don't know, they are just being raised and with a perspective that most people just don't have. And they're really, really inspiring, these kids. Like they speak multiple languages. They travel with their parents to, El Salvador or Madeira and all of these different like Bitcoin friendly places. And I just think that they're being raised with such an interesting perspective on life and such a freedom kind of mindset. So that was really amazing to see. And yeah, I mean, I just met some really fascinating people. And so definitely one that you should catch. Definitely like a real Bitcoin conference. So yeah, it was really good. So um, that was fantastic. Obviously, spent some quality time with my dad's side of the family who live in Dublin. Now I'm in Provence for my parents' birthday, my mum's birthday actually, and I'm gonna do go through the astrology through the new moon in Cancer as well. So from full moon to new moon. And so maybe a little bit of a long episode, but I'm going to do that. I do plan on being back by the new moon, before the new moon, but just in case my plans change, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to record another episode. So I just want to make sure that we're all caught up with that. So with that long intro and update, let's get straight into it. So, June 11th, we have the full moon in Sagittarius. So, it's a strawberry full moon, and it really is like the truth seeker's illumination. So, when the full moon, like this full moon occurs when the moon is in Sagittarius, it opposes the sun in Gemini, and it highlights the polarity between facts and philosophy, logic and belief, and thinking and knowing. So that's the kind of balance that we're looking for in this full moon. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is a planet we're going to talk a lot about in this episode. And it's the planet of growth, of wisdom, of higher learning, and expansion. So at its core, Sagittarius is the truth seeker. And it's always aiming for the higher perspective. It really thrives on travel and exploration in the physical realm, also in the mental realm, and also in other realms. Like we love expanding and, jumping timelines and, you know, exploring other realms and other realities and things like that. Like that's our thing. Also prioritize higher education, philosophy, and religion and spirituality. Known for optimism and vision, freedom and independence, loving, and big picture thinking. Like, not so great with the details, but really good with the big picture thinking. As always, the full moon is a time of culmination, of clarity and release, and it brings what's been hidden to light. It shines a spotlight on that. So, and it shines a spotlight on Sagittarius themes in everyone's lives. So, actually shining a light on emotional truths. And it's the peak of the lunar cycle, and it's just this moment of illumination. So, under this full moon, truths will come to the surface, especially those we've avoided or intellectualized. So, it may be a time to let go of outdated beliefs and expand your perspective beyond your current mental constructs. So, the Sagittarius Gemini axis is all about mind versus meaning. So, a Gemini sun is curious, a Sagittarius moon is wise. A Gemini sun is the fact gatherer, Sagittarius moon is the meaning maker. Gemini is talkative, Sagittarius is philosophical. Gemini is analytical, Sagittarius is intuitive. Gemini seeks data, and Sagittarius seeks truth. So, if you know Sagittarius people, like you know that you can't really lie to us. I mean, people do still, obviously, but it is a really funny experience because you're kind of sitting there going, do you think I'm believing what you're saying to me? It's that weird kind of like back and forth of going, do you believe what you're telling me? Do you think I believe this? Like, I know that you know that I know that I'm lying, that you're lying, So that kind of thing is definitely an experience for Sagittarius with Sagittarius people. So you've probably noticed that with Sagittarius in your life, that they kind of just can see through and always see the truth. So this full moon really invites you to balance that information overload of Gemini with the soul level insight of Sagittarius. So are you clinging to surface level facts and missing like that deeper wisdom? Or conversely, are you like really lost in the dogma and avoiding the reality that's right in front of you? Like Sagittarius, we don't love like reality. It's like so boring here. We're excited to go and explore other versions of reality. So sometimes we need to balance that out and keep our feet on the ground and look at the details and be a little bit more focused in that way as well. So 20 degrees Sagittarius is also associated with revelations of higher truth, a strong sense of moral justice, and bold visionary thinking. Sometimes at this full moon, you will witness a crisis of faith or a challenging to your existing belief system. So if you are sort of sensing that, allow that to happen. Like lean into that. Make sure that if you're having a crisis of faith, question that. Start to ask those questions and dig deeper, and challenge your existing belief systems. Like this, the energy of this full moon is really supporting that. So this degree can mark a turning point in how you view the world. So, especially in areas like philosophy, of travel, of law, and of spiritual teachings. So all of the things that's like very Sagittarius. Um, And of course, we need to be careful of the shadow side of Sagittarius energy. Um, the full moon may be fully illuminated, but there's the dark side of the moon, right? And we need to keep that in check as well. So the shadow side of Sagittarius to watch out for is self-righteousness or moral superiority, escapism through fantasy or spiritual bypassing, or ignoring the details in favor of sweeping generalizations. Um, so those are like key points to sort of watch out for if you catch yourself leaning into those. Um, Questions to ponder, to journal, to reflect on during this moon is what truth is being revealed to me right now? Like it's a really good time to sit with this energy of the full moon, like 3 days either side of the full moon, actually, and just sit with these questions. So, what truth is being revealed to me right now? Am I living in alignment with my core beliefs? Where do I need to let go of old worldviews or biases? And what does freedom actually mean to me? And also, obviously, then that brings up the question of what limits it, like what's limiting it in my life right now. So, this full moon really wants you to bridge knowledge with wisdom. And so, stay open minded, but rooted in your own personal moral compass and let your inner philosopher speak, but also listen to your mind and the whispers of your spirit too. So, what does this full moon have in store for Bitcoin? Again, it's always centered around truth seeking, truth revelation with Sagittarius energy. So, we're looking at like a market truth reveal, sentiment swings, and really the focus for this whole video is really a global macro focus and where Bitcoin fits into that rather than Bitcoin alone itself. So again, the full moon represents a culmination, a revelation in the financial markets, volatility, and also it's always an emotional release. That's why you do tend to get volatility during full moons and even new moons as well. But also, this full moon coincides with, I think, in the bond market, there's a UST auction or US Treasuries auction. So, we can expect some volatility around this full moon for sure. But full moons also usually, for people that are new here, are usually market turning points. So it's usually the time in that 3 day window that we tend to print a local bottom. They can also be moments of overreaction or sudden shifts in sentiment, and also times when hidden news, truths, or data is revealed to the public. So as always, expect increased trading volume, possibly sharp price swings, and the potential for market overreactions. Because as I said, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter really expands everything it touches. So that doesn't necessarily mean expansion upwards. It can for sure, because it's very optimistic as well, but it can also expand to the downside too, especially around emotionally charged events. Everybody's watching the bond market or should be right now. So I do expect that that will be quite pivotal within the next 2 weeks, this auction as well. So the macro themes that are in play during this full moon, as I said, Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter. Um, so its influence in financial astrology really highlights global markets, foreign currencies, and international trade. So we're looking also at big tech, of travel sectors, of Bitcoin and crypto, of education, and also legal and political focus as well. So speculative optimism or irrational exuberance is really, really common during this time because Sagittarius is a fire sign. And so market confidence could surge short term, but overextension, like a risk of overextension, is kind of likely during this time. So inflated expectations or hype can really distort rational decision making. So you do need to like keep very, very grounded during this full moon. Bitcoin and also like the broader crypto market does very much resonate strongly with Sagittarius energy. It's decentralized, it's borderless, which is very Sagittarian. The philosophy of freedom and sovereignty very much aligns with Sagittarius values and archetypes. And it's speculative by nature and often very impacted by public narrative and belief shifts. So these are all very Sagittarian themes. And at 20 degrees Sagittarius, we could see revelations about global regulations, ETFs, or different macroeconomic policies, changes in institutional sentiment, or public perception of Bitcoin, as a freedom asset. So we could see during this full moon price extremes, like extreme sharp spikes or dumps driven by more macro headlines and emotional news. As always, with a full moon, expect some volatility. Keep a very close eye because Sagittarius is um, tie to travel and exploration. Really watch global news and macro events. Full moons in Sagittarius often coincide with macro events, and definitely it's a time to reevaluate your beliefs about the market. So Sagittarius again prompts a truth check, on your philosophy. So why are you in Bitcoin? Why are you interested in Bitcoin? It's time to get very truthful and honest with yourself about that. And so the full moon in Sagittarius is like this cosmic checkpoint for truth, for expansion, and for speculation. So it kind of signals a revealing of truth behind the hype, an emotionally driven shift in sentiment, and a possible short-term bottom based on maybe macro headlines or collective belief systems. So let Jupiter's wisdom guide you, not just its optimism. So there's wisdom given in Jupiter, and obviously the optimism is the leader, but you need both, right? So make sure you focus on that. Okay, so I want to take it back a couple of days pre-full moon to the 9th of June, where Jupiter enters Cancer. And this goes on till the 30th. Jupiter is in Cancer until the 30th of June. So for this transit, think emotional wealth, real estate growth, maybe safety investing, and really very much attuned to sentiment-based markets. So as I said, we're going to be very focused on Jupiter, the planet of growth, expansion, optimism, abundance, and belief. This video. So wherever Jupiter goes, it magnifies that area of life, sometimes positively and sometimes excessively. So in financial astrology, Jupiter's transits reflect like shifts in the collective economic optimism, in trends and in the flow of capital. So then we have Cancer, which is ruled by the moon and is very much associated with home, with family, with domestic security, with emotions, protection, safety, nostalgia. And it also touches, sectors like real estate, of land, food, shelter, and also affects like ancestry, like generational wealth, impacts mass sentiment and emotional undercurrents. So in the markets, Cancer is very much tied to defensive investing and recession-proof sectors and consumer habits that are very much driven by emotion and security. And so those will be the focus for the remainder of this month. There will definitely, for this period, there will definitely be the rise of more emotional investing and safety seeking. So the market may prioritize emotional comfort over aggressive risk taking during this time. So definitely a shift towards protectivism and also economic nationalism. Like it's a very kind of like protective energy, a very patriotic energy as well. So you can expect sort of more regulations around foreign assets, possibly a resurgence in local manufacturing, but not necessarily actually in it, but definitely in the narrative around it. Like, I'm sorry, but like America is never going to be making the iPhones, you know what I mean? But there's definitely going to be a big resurgence in that narrative because it's very emotional for people. An emphasis on domestic markets and currencies, and increased government support programs. So definitely like nurturing sectors will thrive in this time. So any sectors that are associated with care, healing, food, water, um, those sorts of areas are definitely spaces and projects to keep an eye on. So we are likely to see emotional sentiment swings. With Cancer, it's ruled by the moon. It governs mass emotion and intuition. So Bitcoin prices can become are quite sensitive to collective sentiment anyway, and to social trends and media waves. So expect that to be a little bit heightened during this time. So sudden buy sell kind of frenzies are maybe a little dramatic, but um, sell-offs and things like that are driven by emotional catalysts um, are probably going to be amplified during this time. Also, another narrative that I really want to keep an eye on during this time, the digital real estate framing. So expect that to come to the forefront again at this time. So seeing Bitcoin as a store of value, like digital gold, but also I think it was Michael Saylor that started this kind of narrative about Bitcoin being equating to digital property. So expect to hear more about that as well, and to be true, and Bitcoin to be treated in that same way. So sort of viewed in the same way that you would invest in a house over like 30 years. Expect the narrative around Bitcoin to become like that over this period. So it's also a narrative about being used as a hedge against inflation, again, fiat instability, and especially in developing markets. Like I said, I've just been in Turkey, where the narrative, like there's so much fiat fuckery, like their currency is, they've since 2019, they've been in their currency has been in hyperinflation, and it's not even stable now, I don't think. So they've been moving towards stable coins, actually, not necessarily Bitcoin, to sort of be able to have some stability in their currency. So expect to see more of that. And for this transit, it's more about like cautious expansion rather than, big God candles and huge spikes. So Bitcoin could see a slow but steady accumulation rather than like these dramatic spikes. So generally, people who are buying Bitcoin at this time are preferring to hold rather than, be flipping their Bitcoin and selling it. So similar to how someone treats land or a home, expect that kind of narrative to build. Um, Cancer is also cardinal water sign, so initiating emotional protection, very much at a systemic level. So this transit also could coincide with a building narrative around CBDCs. Those are coming for Europe in October, so not that far away. And sort of new protective regulations aiming to target DeFi, crypto exchanges, and moves to nationalize or attempt to nationalize and heavily control digital assets at a state level. Expect to see more of those kind of conversations. So really wanting to lean towards more of the long-term, emotionally stable investments to hedge against volatility during this time. Okay, so then on the 12th of June, we have a transiting Sun trine Bitcoin's natal Neptune. So think idealism, illusions, hype waves, and creative narratives. So the transiting Sun in astrology, the Sun represents vital energy, a spotlight, clarity, and the ego. And so the transiting sun reveals what's coming into conscious awareness in the collective. So it's a kind of public attention meter. That's kind of what it performs during this time. Um, and then we have Bitcoin's natal Neptune. So Neptune rules dreams and illusions, idealism, faith, confusion, mysticism, and the media. So Bitcoin's natal Neptune, which is in Aquarius, suggests that the Bitcoin network is spiritually tied to idealism, to collective freedom, to decentralization and disruption through incredibly visionary tech. When it's in Trine, for those that are new here, Trine is a flowing, supportive aspect. And so it brings ease, harmony, and subtle opportunity. But it can also like lull people into complacency or unrealistic optimism if it's not grounded. During this transit, we could see public enthusiasm around Bitcoin's vision, around Satoshi's original white paper, around the original purpose and vision for Bitcoin. When the sun shines a light on Neptune, which represents collective hopes and dreams, you could see like a definite like increase of idealistic narratives in the media that are not necessarily wrong, but this is what you could hear like Bitcoin will save us from fiat collapse. I personally do think that that is true. And Bitcoin equals digital freedom, or Bitcoin is the new internet of money. So those sorts of idealistic headlines, you don't see them in the news that often. You could start to hear them coming into the collective narrative during this transit. There's also this element of creative storytelling and viral hype. So you can definitely expect some increased social media buzz, influencer campaigns, or like documentaries and movies and news that really glamorizes Bitcoin's origin, its mission, and its future. So none of these things are necessarily a bad thing, but it's just interesting that that's what the astrological energy supports. So also creative narratives, equates generally to speculative interest, which can definitely drive price temporarily upward, even without like hard fundamentals backing that up. So you might see some FOMO-driven buying because Neptune really does cloud logic. So this trine allows people to like project their fantasies onto Bitcoin's future. So expect a bit of FOMO behavior or some emotional entries, particularly from people that are brand new to the space, or are like highly emotional traders, which is none of us, of course. Um, this is not typically like the kind of like super hype and then massive hard crash kind of transit, but it's definitely one where there could be inflated expectations and then like gently deflated over time, if not like backed up and matched by real news or adoption metrics. So you want to capitalize on the sentiment, but stay grounded and clean up. Also, it's an opportunity to really clean up narratives in your own mindset. So Neptune's activation can reveal or reinforce like illusions around wealth and generational wealth. And so you do want to ask yourself, like, am I investing based on a fantasy? Or and also do I see Bitcoin clearly? Or am I projecting like spiritual meaning onto it? So you want to really be able to tune in and balance idealism and intuition, because this is a really powerful combination for manifestation. So it's definitely a favorable transit if you're wanting to practice any manifestation practices. So when the sun trines Bitcoin's natal Neptune, the market really becomes a mirror of hopes and dreams and illusions. So very, very positive. But this transit illuminates the spiritual and visionary appeal of Bitcoin, which can lead to sentiment-based price movement or soft pumps or idealistic speculation. So you definitely want to be inspired by this transit, but also keep like at least one foot on the ground. I'm pausing this episode for just a moment to share with you one of our partners, the Sculpt Society. I'm obsessed with TSS, created by celebrity trainer Megan Roop. It's not just another fitness app, it's the most fun you'll ever have working out. You'll find sculpt, strength, and dance cardio all in one super accessible method that actually works. Whether you have 10 minutes or 50, want low impact sculpting or full body dance cardio, the Sculpt Society has you covered. Inside the app, you'll find over 900 on demand workouts and weekly live classes, plus curated programs that meet you wherever you are, beginner, advanced, or even pre or postnatal. There's no complicated choreography, no guilt, just movement that makes you feel confident and strong in your own skin. You can stream from any device anywhere in the world and even download classes to work out offline. It doesn't matter whether you're in your living room or in a hotel room. So if you've been waiting for a sign to get back into your body and feel good, this is it. Click on the link in the description box and join the Sculpt Society to start your 7-day free trial today. You'll feel the difference after just one class. Let's get back into the episode. Then on the 15th of June, this is actually the transit that really made me make this video. This one and the next one, both on the 15th of June. This is where it gets a little spicy, guys. So we've had, pretty chilled out, looking inward, philosophical Sagittarius full moon, and then we've had a sun trine Bitcoin's natal, like a dreamy sort of aspect. And then we come in really hot on the 15th with Mars in Leo squared Uranus and Taurus. So think shock, volatility, breakout moves, market rebellion, and risk on, risk off battle and chaos kind of thing. So Mars is action, aggression, and volatility, and it governs energy surges, fights, impulsive moves, and sharp decisions, and really like warlike timing. So in Leo, that's kind of magnified. It's proud, dramatic, and it's bold action. Like Mars in Leo, like wants to be seen, wants to be noticed. So it's quite dramatic. And then we've got Uranus again, which is shock, rebellion, innovation, and distribution. And it rules sudden shifts, black swan events, and tech disruption. So decentralized currencies like Bitcoin, which are ruled by Uranus, the focus is on them. And then in Taurus, it disrupts money systems and assets and markets. So when it's a square, for those again that are new here, a square aspect is a time of tension, of change, breakdowns or breakthroughs. So it's a 90-degree friction point between two planetary energies. So it's often a catalyst for explosive or volatile movement. So this is a really high volatility alert. For me, it's one of the most explosive transits in financial astrology. And even though it happens on a Sunday, kind of like shocked to see it a little bit. And markets may swing wildly. So expecting that false move on the Monday, um, it could be pretty dramatic. It could be pretty dramatic. Opening on the Monday could be pretty dramatic. So Bitcoin is usually pretty positively responsive to Uranus transits. It is sensitive to them though, and but just because, of the nature of this particular Uranus transit, we don't, I think it's going to be more focused on the upheaval in traditional markets, but that, in turn will probably affect Bitcoin as well. So expect some flash crashes, sudden spikes potentially, and false breakouts or mass liquidations. Like, I just find it very unlikely that the market maker would not, if there were some like pretty crazy black swan like unexpected moves on the Sunday, I can't see that the market maker would not use that opportunity to take out both sides of the trade at open on the Monday. So let's see. There is a potential for a black swan event. So Mars and Uranus can signal unexpected global news that really disrupts markets. So regulatory surprises, banking collapses, exchange hacks or outages, potentially some sudden whale sell-offs, or even political or geopolitical unrest. There is a ton of, I would say, manufactured unrest all throughout the globe at the moment. I'm here in France, and apparently there is a lot of rioting here in France. I've not seen any of it. But obviously, you've got LA, you've got Spain, so you've got Northern Ireland as well. So there is a lot of unrest at this point in time. And so that kind of ties in. Like, Leo is all about ego battles, and Taurus is about money and land. So that kind of tracks as well. So we shall see what happens on the 15th, but just to be aware of it, like, none of these things are ever to scare people, but it's just like, if that comes and something kind of shocking happens, for me personally, there's like a little bit of peace. It's like, oh, this is like in the astrology. Like, it kind of, I don't know, it eases the stress of that a little bit, I think, and gives some guidance. So I actually think, because it's Uranus and Taurus, I think the upheaval is really going to be in traditional finance. And then we have like Mars and Leo, which is dramatic individual actions. So definitely watch out for major central bank comments or announcements, sudden, like as I said, bank collapses. I think all eyes need to be on Japan, the BOJ, and also the US bond market. So those are really where my eyes are focused in the macro at the moment. And if there's anything to happen, that's outside of like geopolitical war or anything like, geopolitical, like a war or something like that, then it would be in those markets that I am watching first. So there's also tension between risk on and risk off. So Mars wants like quick, aggressive gains, and Uranus wants freedom and disruption, like lasting freedom and lasting disruption. So the square really creates this battle between a risk appetite and also financial change and security in that change. So you should be on guard for both unexpected gains and losses. It's a This is definitely a like strikes from nowhere transit. So it will be interesting to see what happens during this time. But I mean, it's a Sunday anyway, so unlikely to be trade. Like, I don't trade on the weekends at all. But this might be a weekend to go and, spend with your family or whatever, rather than looking at the charts, because it might be a little bit hectic. So prepare for emotional market conditions, practice emotional regulation, because Mars is impulsive and Uranus can create anxiety. So you need to be able to regulate your own nervous system and your own emotions, and avoid panic selling. Use this or view this as a shakeout window. So don't blindly follow influencers at all during this time. Rumors really move fast during Leo Uranus kind of drama. So keep that in mind as well. So this is one of those transits where anything can happen, and it often does. So Mars wants speed, Uranus wants rebellion, and together they can really shake the foundations of confidence in financial systems. So that's where I'm expecting this to sort of play out. For Bitcoin, this often plays out in like flashy, volatile, and extreme price movements up and down. but also for Bitcoin long term, it's a good thing because these things need to be shaken out. The old financial system needs to be exposed for what it is, and Bitcoin can carry on about its business, right? So, but in the short term, there may be some serious volatility. So just be aware of that. Also on the 15th, we have Jupiter in Cancer square Saturn in Aries. So again, quite a, interesting aspect. So this is more of a slow moving macroeconomic influence with medium term effects. So again, Jupiter popping up for us this week. Expansion, growth, optimism. When it's in Cancer, it's about emotional growth. It's about security focused wealth, protectionism, and family values. So it promotes growth in safe haven assets, properties, home-based investments, and commodities like silver, gold, and Bitcoin. And then we have Saturn, which is structure, restriction, and responsibility. And when that's in Aries, Aries is assertive, impatient, and self-directed discipline, but it's also prone to friction and ego-bound constraints. So it really demands accountability and realism here. And again, we have the square aspect, which is tension, challenge, and conflict. It's not a free-flowing aspect, and it really does test structures, especially in the market. So this is an interesting one when you combine it with the other aspect that's on the same day. That one's more of a shock, black swan event. And then this one is more of a like challenging the realism of the structures in the market. So if you have some upheaval in the traditional markets and then you have Bitcoin here to sort of be that Saturn lesson and stability, I don't think Bitcoin's price would be stable in these kind of times. But as a technology, as a system, it's incredibly stable and trustworthy and, actually quite simple to understand once you can understand it, once you take the time to understand it. So, um, I just think that the dynamic of those two is quite interesting because you can see this like economic tug of war of growth versus control in this aspect. So you've got Jupiter that wants expansion, optimism, and opportunity, and then you have Saturn, which enforces limits, rules, and contraction. So as we know in our fiat-based Ponzi scheme, really, of the US dollar, is that we have this extreme fake growth and artificial expansion. And this is really Saturn coming in and going, no, no, there are limits to this. There are rules, like maths matters. So I think that that's what we're going to sort of see with these aspects on the 15th. So the square creates a market-wide push and pull between bullish speculation of Jupiter and the regulatory or economic tightening of Saturn. So this could show up as bullish hopes being met with some resistance, right? And policy tightening and interest rate adjustments possibly that week, and or some restrictive news in some way. So we may see for Bitcoin, we could see some like irrational enthusiasm followed by like sobering correction. So especially if there's a mismatch between like expectation and macroeconomic data, like this is going to be the focus. So don't overreact to fear or hope because they will both be amplified at this time. So definitely don't ignore risk management in light, especially on this day on the 15th and either side, a couple of days either side of it, with this mentality of this one is different. It's not different. So you need to have a clear strategy, a clear plan in place and be following that, removing your emotions and following that. So this Jupiter Saturn square marks a period where emotional optimism, Jupiter in Cancer meets this cold, sharp boundaries of Saturn and Aries. And so that can be quite confronting, I think, when it comes to financial markets. So the pair of those transits paired together is pretty interesting. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens on the 15th. Let's see. And then on the 16th, we have Mercury trine Bitcoin's natal Mercury. We have this transiting Mercury trine Bitcoin's natal Mercury. So Mercury is the planet of communication, of trade, of markets and data and news. So it's incredibly important in financial astrology. And it has this effect of mental clarity, of efficient communication, and also fast-paced market responses. So as I said, Mercury rules information, of trading, of technology, of transactions, of logic, anything to do with contracts, and it also governs news. So in financial astrology, Mercury transits often align with market moving news, sudden volatility, or key communication-based decisions like FOMC or, things like that, or big news headlines. Bitcoin's natal Mercury is in Capricorn, so it gives it a serious, calculated, and reputation-aware communication style. And so you can really see that when you look at Bitcoin compared to other cryptos. Like when you look at Bitcoin and you understand Bitcoin, it's very clear business. It's a very different energy to other crypto projects. So I always think that that's really interesting. And the way that people talk about Bitcoin is very different compared to other crypto projects as well. So it's much more serious, it's much more calculated, and it has a much stronger reputation as well. So when the transiting Mercury makes a trine to this point, we see clear market communication, fast, smart decisions, and traders aligning with Bitcoin's rhythm. So we can see some market clarity and some sharp sentiment. So this is a time when information flows really easily. Your transactional analysis and even astrological analysis is very clear and very precise. And you can also process data really, really quickly during these transits. So news events may be interpreted rationally rather than emotionally. And Bitcoin is likely to respond to technical analysis setups more clearly, fundamental news with clarity, and also macro signals without disruption or distortion. So expect well-behaved markets, basically, and brief trend alignment, like a calm but decisive trading environment. So this is hot off the back of potential black swan. Then we've got like the Jupiter Saturn, tug of war. And then we've got this, which is very clear, concise communication and a well-behaved market. So it's pretty interesting. And we could also see some like positive crypto news or announcements. So Bitcoin tends to align with Mercury trines with like partnership announcements or country adoption, um, tech upgrades, or positive media coverage in general, maybe institutional communication. So a price move upward on clarity or goodwill, especially if the broader market conditions are stable. So if we've had this like kind of crazy couple of days, with maybe some unexpected news or something like that, the dust settles on that, then we could see Bitcoin recover quite quickly from that. So it's the ideal time for strategic trades. So definitely looking for those kind of like positive reversal signals. And it's an excellent window for strategic buying because the market signals will reflect logic over FOMO. So communication also with exchanges and wallets or institutions, everything is much more seamless during this time. And also you can really trust your on-chain data, your TA, your macro analysis, and your astro analysis as well. So it's a lot more predictive, and there's just a lot of clarity in that. Bitcoin could definitely trend higher or move decisively in a clear, rational direction. So even if it's to the downside, it's going to be very clearly to the downside. There's not going to be any confusion in during this time. So especially if it's supported by fundamentals and technicals. Mercury is really the planet of mental harmony. So it's trine to Bitcoin's natal Mercury, brings this resonance of like intention, of tech, of timing. So it's like the market speaks fluently and it's asking like, are you listening clearly? Because that's what I always refer to trading as, is that like you're learning how to read the language of the market, to be able to interpret the language of the market. And during this kind of transit, it's speaking fluently, and it's, are you listening, choosing to listen clearly? So this is a real chance to refine your relationship to the data to your charts, and to your financial intuition, really with logic leading the way. So this is a really good time to also dive into your studies and yeah, like let that lead. I'm briefly interrupting this episode to speak to you about one of our partners, Ritual Supplements, and in particular, Ritual Stress Relief. It's the first of its kind supplement powered by Bioseries technology. Unlike typical stress supplements that fade, Ritual's dual action formula gives you instant calm followed by all-day support. It works with your body's natural cortisol rhythm, helping you respond instead of react, ground instead of spiral. Its unique extended release blend delivers nature's calming adaptogens like ashwagandha and lemon balm when your body actually needs them. That means no crash, no fog, just clarity, focus, and nervous system balance. It's a sigh of relief that keeps going. So if you have spikes in your stress levels or are simply feeling dysregulated, give Ritual Stress Relief a try. Click on the link in the description box to find your perfect daily ritual. Okay, now that we found our Zen, let's get back to the show. Then the next transit that we have on June 18th is Jupiter in Cancer square Neptune in Aries. So again, it's a tense one, it's some friction. And it triggers action. Also, like square aspects trigger action. So again, Jupiter again, Neptune again. So expansion, optimism versus illusion, dreams and delusion. And so it's creating a bit of a clash between the overconfidence of Jupiter and the fantasy of Neptune. So think of this transit as a cosmic tug of war between hope and hype. And I feel like all of these transits have been really back and forth this video. So Jupiter wants to expand and believe while Neptune obscures and idealizes. So together in a square, they can really create a false sense of optimism, inflated expectations, and market confusion. So in this context, with the backdrop of the previous aspects that I've just spoken about, we may get some narratives if we get some very unexpected news in the traditional markets. We may get a narrative of Bitcoin is decoupling from the traditional markets. It's decoupling from the Nasdaq. It's decoupling from gold even, and it's doing its own thing. It's the future. It's something fresh. It's something new. Everything old is dying, and we're how do I say this? We're in the future already, right? That's kind of how it will be portrayed. It's like the time is now. The time is now for Bitcoin to take over and be a Bitcoin standard. And I think we should just be a little bit careful about buying into those narratives. Yes, I fully believe that. I fully believe in the future of Bitcoin. I fully believe in the optimism of Bitcoin. And but it's going to take time, and we need to turn through the wheels of life and Bitcoin adoption through those wheels. It's not an immediate up and to the right kind of situation. I just don't feel that we're there quite yet. The bigger astrological elements don't really align to that time being here yet. We're talking post 2027 onwards, we can start talking about things like that. But there's a lot of water under the bridge to happen next year before we get to that point, right? So, as I said, think of it as like a cosmic tug of war between hope and hype. Jupiter wants to expand and to believe, while Neptune, obscures and idolizes. So together, as I said, they can create this false sense of optimism. So hype cycle, you can expect a hype cycle peak and speculation. So Jupiter and Neptune square, often correlates with irrational exuberance, speculative bubbles, and false narratives like overhyped technology or use cases, things like that. Overhyped price predictions as well. Like we definitely need to be a bit careful in that if you think back to last cycle, the narrative was always like, we are definitely going to 100K that cycle. And that didn't happen and it caught a lot of people out. So, what's the next number? I think the next number is probably that's going to be talked about, that's going to be guaranteed in this cycle is $1 million. And so I'd just be a little bit careful and cautious of that. I don't really like to make those long price, like out there price predictions for the long term. I prefer to go, step by step and see what is sort of supporting these moves and where we're at in the cycle. So, you can probably expect some sudden price rallies based on belief, not necessarily fundamentals. And also, if there are really scary things happen in the traditional markets, in the bond market, in the banking sector, those sorts of things, they elevate Bitcoin and make Bitcoin look really sparkly and beautiful and powerful, and it is. But as I said, I just don't think we're there yet. And I'm not sure that the fundamentals like back up that belief system for the now quite yet. I think that that's for the future. Just to be cautious, like this is a classic setup for a kind of buy the rumor, sell the news kind of price behavior. So just be prepared for that. You could see a lot of market confusion or misinformation and manipulation. Neptune rules fog and is, in a very harsh aspect, like a square. It can mean, fake news or misleading headlines, delays in regulatory clarity or sudden fear, um, or FUD. So just be on the lookout for like influencer driven volatility or emotional trading and like disguised manipulation in social media driven price movements. So just avoid making decisions based solely on media hype or influencer sentiment and rely on objective technical analysis and on-chain data. Like that's the focus during this transit. Jupiter square and Neptune can really cause traders to overestimate gains and underestimate risks. So don't fall for the like to the moon predictions, like I said, right? But let's just take it one step at a time rather than having these ideas that were like, well, it's definitely going to get there. And then you stay in projects or trades too long, right? So you want to be really grounded. So don't miss any red flags due to confirmation bias, like I said. And don't mistake short-term optimism for long-term stability. This is a transit where dreams and delusions look the same until they don't, right? So this square really tests your discernment. Are you making decisions rooted in reality or are you chasing illusions? So dream, but don't delude. Like that's the theme. So there are possible lingering effects from this transit also for like 2 to 3 weeks, especially if other transits reinforce the confusion. So then on June 20th, we have the Sun trine Bitcoin's natal Venus. And again, the sun is this like core energy, attention, vitality, spotlight, leadership, and visibility. And then we have Venus, which is about value, it's about wealth, attractiveness, currency flow, and financial appeal. It really brings a spotlight to what we value. And when it's a trine, it's a harmonious, flowing, supportive, like opportunity without friction. So imagine the sun is like a spotlight on Venus as money and attraction. So when they flow harmoniously in this trine, it's like shining a golden light on Bitcoin's value proposition. So people notice its appeal. There's more positive attention and financial energy flows more easily. So again, as I said, off the back of these very dramatic potentially dramatic events, Bitcoin maybe comes out shining. And at first, it's this like speculative, oh my God, frenzied kind of thing. And then it comes into the light of the sun, and people are like, okay, hang on a second, there's something really here. It's that kind of process and that kind of evolution, right? And that's what we're looking for. Again, this transit is positive sentiment. So, it's a really feel good aspect, honestly. It increases public confidence in Bitcoin. It's got the safe haven perception during uncertain times. And just the overall kind of brand appeal and attractiveness as an investment, I think will increase. And, Bitcoin is not a company. It doesn't have this like flashy marketing team behind it. It just does what it does. Like TikTok, next block, Bitcoin does what it does. And actually, its appeal comes when everything around it kind of falls away and starts to lose validity. That's when Bitcoin looks so shiny and so powerful, right? So that's where we're at with this transit. So definitely a transit for bullish narratives and price stabilization after maybe a rocky road for maybe a week. Then we could have some price stabilization through this. Expect some announcements, adoption news, those kind of positive things. So you're more likely to buy and hold rather than sell in this space as well. So sentiment is very naturally upbeat and making this a very supportive time for trend continuation or recovery, depending on where we're at and how we responded to these other aspects earlier on. More of an appetite for risk on assets. So Venus represents money flow and aesthetic value. So when it's supported by the sun, markets definitely favor like luxury assets, Bitcoin, crypto as a whole, emerging tech. And Bitcoin becomes more attractive versus traditional store of value. So we'll probably see increased media coverage, a surge in influencer and retail attention, and buying interest from new demographics. So expect short-term upward momentum, especially when this transit is supported by other bullish aspects. So it's super interesting. As I said, when I was at the Bitcoin conference in Ireland, there was a lot of people there that had not bought any Bitcoin. A lot of times you'll go to these conferences and it's a lot of Bitcoiners, and it's so cool to get together and chat with like-minded people, and that's amazing. But it was really powerful to see the amount of people that had come that they're first time Bitcoiners, And so I can see that Bitcoin is reaching new demographics for sure. And also on that note, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, I met a whole bunch of people that was super interested in astrology. And I was so encouraged by this because usually I just think that I'm like here in my own little corner of the internet, weirdly, looking at Bitcoin's astrology. But the amount of people that are really interested in astrology and particularly applying that to Bitcoin, interested in Bitcoin's evolution cycle and Bitcoin's astrology, it was so encouraging to meet other people that are kind of like on the same page as me. So if you're from the Bitcoin Island conference, then what's up? It was great to meet you all. So, yeah, so again, I think we're reaching new demographics that haven't previously been interested in Bitcoin or open to Bitcoin or seen how Bitcoin, fits into their world. Um, because Venus also governs like alliances and deals, this transit also really supports strategic partnerships or integrations as well. Maybe ETF or exchange listings, protocol upgrades, or future enhancements that appeal to people like maybe the Lightning Network or things like that. So watch for public or corporate partnership that enhance Bitcoin's perceived value, pushing up like its market cap and narrative strength. So really, this is like a moment to realign with value-based thinking. Like, what do you value? Any Venus transit is always asking you that question. What do you really value at a soul level? And the Sun Venus trine really reminds us that value isn't found in hype, but it's found in harmony. So invest in what really reflects authentic worth to you. So our next aspect is June 21st, and it's the sun opposite Bitcoin's natal Pluto. So the transiting sun again really is a big player this in this period of the cycle. So visibility, conscious focus, ego, leadership, illumination. And then we have Bitcoin's natal Pluto, and Pluto rules power, control, transformation, evolution, destruction, and rebirth. And it really relates to deep structural forces. So, regulation, hidden agendas, institutional influence, market makers. And because it's an opposition, it's a tense polarity. So it does bring like external challenges between these energies. It's a push and pull dynamic and the need to balance these opposing forces. So imagine Bitcoin's deep hidden power center of Pluto being lit up and challenged by the sun. So it brings external attention to hidden control structures such as governments, institutions, market makers, or even internal vulnerabilities in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it can reveal what's been operating behind the scenes, whether that's for better or for worse. So Pluto symbolizes financial power, and the sun opposing it often triggers like clashes between retail investors and institutional players. So if you are a retail trader or investor, you kind of like you're not looking to go against the market maker. Like you're never going to beat the market maker. You don't have enough capital for that. So really what you're wanting to do is align with what the market maker is doing. That's always the goal. And so definitely keep an eye on that this cycle. And if you can't see what the market maker is doing, then it's time to sit out of the market. Like that's the clear, hard and fast rule. So we could see heightened government scrutiny, regulation, news, or FUD. Again, I think this is more related to crypto rather than Bitcoin, but also maybe related to regulation around citizens that hold Bitcoin, right? In particular countries, like we may see that, or attempts to dominate or manipulate price action. And we see that kind of every day, to be honest. But it might just be more obvious during this transit. So price action may well reflect this tug of war dynamic. So sharp rallies could be met with aggressive pullbacks. News catalysts could be used to trigger emotional trades. So you always want to be looking out for the market maker trying to force you to make an emotional decision, take a position so that they can take it the other way, basically. So expect some volatility during this transit. You know, it's often accompanied by strong directional moves followed by deep corrections. So also during this transit could also illuminate shadow forces. So Pluto represents the hidden hand. So whale behavior, market maker manipulation, black swan events again. So this is the second time, like in this video in June, that these transits can be linked to potential black swan events. So that's very odd for June astrology, to be honest. So when the sun opposes Pluto, you could see whistleblowers or revelations, revelations can emerge. Market manipulation can become really visible. So again, this is more in the crypto space, pump and dump schemes might become like a lot more obvious during this transit, and backroom decisions or institutional plays will be brought out into the light. So definitely watch for news events or, data that can change sentiment dramatically. These transits also, often bring a turning point in market psychology. So a fearful dip that can lead to renewed faith, or like a major dump that just clears out the weak hands, followed by a rebound, like something like that. So very much symbolic of death and rebirth themes. Like these definitely apply here. Like crash and recovery cycles, very common under like Pluto when it's, under tension. So short-term pain may pave the way for long-term revaluation or recovery. So that's kind of the theme of this. So the Sun versus Pluto is really representative of ego versus power. So who's really in control? Like, are you approaching Bitcoin from a place of personal empowerment, or are you approaching it from fear? And either is okay. Like it's okay to be fearful of, what you see going on in the world, or, prices are going higher all the time. All of these headlines all the time bombarding you. It's okay for you to feel fear, but it's not okay to not be honest with yourself about your intentions, right? It's really important to accept that and say, I'm coming at this from a place of fear, and then you can work through it from there. So, where are you giving your financial power away? Are you giving it to the crowd, to the market, or to an illusion? So, you really want to be asking these questions during this transit. So we then have on June 22nd, Mercury sextile Bitcoin's natal ascendant. Again, Mercury rules communication, information, news cycles, data, etc. And then we have Bitcoin's natal ascendant. So the ascendant is the rising sign, and that represents how Bitcoin is perceived publicly and its market identity or reputation. So the image it projects in the financial world. And a sextile is a harmonious aspect, it's at 60 degrees and it promotes ease, opportunity, and intelligent integration. So it doesn't force action, but it provides like supportive momentum for those who engage with it consciously. So the market can become more receptive to Bitcoin's message. News and narratives about Bitcoin's flow are clear and positive. Short-term traders and analysts will find clarity and insight. So it's a good news, clear communication kind of window for Bitcoin. So it's likely to benefit from positive headlines and, insightful analysis as well. Buyers may be more rational and data driven rather than overly emotional, and messages from key players like influencers or institutions or regulators or politicians may align with Bitcoin's brand in a helpful or clarifying way. We can expect the market sentiment to improve. The tone around Bitcoin becomes more measured and logical and optimistic. And you can just expect like greater clarity on how Bitcoin is understood or discussed across the media, especially sort of in contrast to any recent confusion or noise. So Mercury really favors technical analysis and trading algorithms and database strategies. So the momentum is really with the traders and traders that can spot cleaner patterns and actionable setups in this time. So definitely use this window to fine tune trading strategies or backtest or digest new economic news and how that affects your trades as well. So announcements around integration, adoption, or innovation are more likely to be well received. So institutional comments or regulatory narratives may have a neutral to positive framing during this transit. So it's a short-term transit. It only lasts 2 to 4 days, kind of max, but expect subtle but favorable influences rather than like big price explosions or anything like that. Mercury transits definitely move quickly, and the effects are strongest like one day, and one day before, one day after the exact sextile. So it's best used for like short-term strategy, news releases, or like analytical reviews. But it's definitely an aspect that brings clarity amid the noise. So it's a window when reason speaks louder than hype. So if you're building in this space, this transit supports clarity and communication, mental sharpness and planning, and alignment between perception of the ascendant and communication of Mercury. And then our final transit before the new moon in Cancer is on June 24th, and that's a Jupiter Cazimi. So again, super positive aspect. So for those of you that are new here, I love a Cazimi and I will always note them. And in astrology, a Cazimi means the heart of the sun. So it's that moment when a planet, in this case, Jupiter, is exactly conjunct the sun. So it's like the planet is seated in the throne room of the king, the king being the sun. bathed in like solar light, empowered and purified. So it's very, very powerful. So again, our favorite this cycle, Jupiter, expansion, optimism, wealth, and growth. And then the sun, illumination, visibility, and vitality. And this is happening in Cancer. So it's about security, emotional capital, domestic markets, and the public mood. So a Kazemi is really a planetary superpower moment. And during this short window, Jupiter's themes are at their very purest and most potent. So it gives rise to new visions of growth, of abundance, and economic optimism. So, again, with Cancer, it's emotional and domestic economy. So, emotional comfort, safety, and sentimentality, and protective attitudes towards value, growth, and generational wealth. So Jupiter Cazimi in Cancer is really like a fertile seed of economic faith, heightened public optimism, especially around financial protection, home ownership, digital safe havens like Bitcoin, and legacy investments. So the emotional value of assets becomes more prominent, and Bitcoin as a hedge against traditional finance could be really seen as that safe harbor. So um, during this transit, I'm expecting renewed faith in Bitcoin's long-term value. So Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. It promotes and performs very well here. And when in Cazimi, it produces this like big picture optimism, a surge in like protective safe haven instruments like gold, real estate, Bitcoin, and an emphasis on legacy building, intergenerational wealth, and decentralized like family banks or family offices. So Bitcoin could benefit from being seen as this financial refuge during global instability, be seen as emotional and intuitive. So all these are justifications for buying and holding Bitcoin, not just like hype or not just logic either. So you can use this energy to refine your long-term strategy and ask yourself, what assets make me feel secure and empowered for the next decade? So maybe that's Bitcoin for you. Maybe that's real estate for you. Maybe that's gold for you. Or maybe it's a combination of, other things as well. But really, you need to sit with that for you. And I think there's going to be also a boost for Bitcoin's narratives of safety, family, and legacy, especially if there are other things that are faltering at this time. So narratives around Bitcoin adoption as a generational wealth tool are probably going to gain traction at this time. Maybe even DeFi or, Bitcoin pension funds and things like that. Family trusts using Bitcoin may, get some new attention as well. So institutions may release feel-good statements or products linked to Bitcoin's long-term potential. So, we don't rely on these things, but, we like them to be for us rather than against us. So the Cazimi window lasts only 6 to 12 hours, and the most potent moment is the exact conjunction. So there is an energetic ripple for this aspect, though, for up to 3 to 5 days before and after, especially strong for initiating like new long-term strategies. So Jupiter Cazimi in Cancer is really a once a year power moment that shines light on where and how we can grow with emotional and financial security. So Bitcoin is likely to benefit from this energy as a symbol of future facing, legacy minded, financial independence. So just be a little bit cautious, though, as we come into the new moon, that, not all growth is grounded. And because Jupiter expands everything that it touches and the sun amplifies that further, we could see again some exaggerated optimism or overextension. So just enjoy the optimism, but keep it grounded. So watch for emotional FOMO, remain grounded in your strategy and not in hype, and pair big vision with disciplined analysis. And then finally, on the 25th of June, we have a new moon in Cancer. And so a new moon occurs when the sun and the moon align at the same degree. And so it makes it a reset point. It's a time for setting intentions and new beginnings and seeding growth under everything that is in Cancer's themes. So in financial astrology, new moons often precede trend reversals, fresh market narratives, or subtle shifts in sentiment. They usually print a local top. So generally, we can expect if we've had an up move that the momentum is going to start waning, and we can expect a little bit of a pullback or some consolidation during that time. And so the themes really for Cancer, the keywords are emotional safety, of home, of family, of security, of public mood and consumer confidence, protective investing, and also water-based elements like flow, feelings, and intuition. So in Cancer, the moon is in its home sign, making this new moon especially potent. So emotions really run deep, and decisions may be guided by feelings of security, of legacy, of emotional alignment, more than just hard numbers. So again, we could see during this new moon some shifting sentiment around like emotional reset around values. So Cancer governs emotional well-being and financial safety. So this new moon could definitely initiate a market mood shift towards protection and security. So maybe a time of consolidation and increased investor focus on safe haven assets like gold, Bitcoin, and real estate. So caution in speculative trading, unless it's paired with like emotional conviction. So Bitcoin is often seen as a long-term store of value, and it definitely may benefit from this emotional pivot, especially among retail investors seeking like this emotional security through decentralization. So um, we could also see a realignment with legacy and purposeful wealth. So this new moon really supports reassessing your why behind investing. So expect themes of financial legacy, decentralization, for the family or for digital inheritance. So expect those things to become more visible. And even traders may feel pulled to align with deeper emotionally resonant narratives. um, so yeah, like freedom tech or financial sovereignty in regards to Bitcoin. So um, in terms of price action, it's not inherently like bullish or bearish, but because it is a new moon, we generally see a bit of a pullback or a bit of a consolidation. And but it doesn't mean like a massive crash or anything like that. But new moons do tend to be a little bit emotional, a little bit volatile, especially in Cancer. So we may see a bit of volatility. Um, but think of it more as like the calm before the wave. Like it's not always visible, but it's like laying this energetic groundwork. So areas and sectors like in regards to like real estate, food, or currency is really a focus during this new moon. And also, Cancer rules real estate markets, food and agriculture markets, national security, and currency. So, again, this new moon could bring headlines and developments in like CBDC rollouts, Bitcoin versus fiat debates, housing affordability debates, and, again, Bitcoin is digital land or inheritance. So expect discussions around financial sovereignty and wealth preservation to really deepen during this time, giving Bitcoin's narrative more emotional weight. So realistically, this new moon brings emotional realignment with financial goals. And so Bitcoin may benefit from protective accumulation, especially from emotionally driven retail buyers. So definitely watch for subtle reversals or consolidation at that time, um, and new narratives around security, value, and long-term investing emerging. So set emotionally anchored financial goals and be open to long-term growth through patience, trust, and strategy. So that's where we're at, bringing us up until that new moon in Cancer. And if I don't do another video at that time, it means I'm still away, and it's just very difficult for me to find time and work around other people's schedules to be able to film these. But I'm doing my best, and I hope that you guys appreciate this video. Again, to all of those people that I met at the Bitcoin conference in Ireland, lots of love to you. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, whether it be Bitcoin related or astrology related or financial astrology related, head over to my website at thebitcoinzodiac.com and shoot me an email, and I always get back to those emails. I don't always reply to the comments because I tend to miss them on YouTube because they are cluttered with so much spam. I'm even tempted to turn them off, to be honest. And I'm pretty terrible with social media like Twitter and things like that. I don't really Twitter. So if you're wanting to get a hold of me, do so on my website, send me an email, and I promise I'll get back to you. So until next time, enjoy the ride. Let's see what this mid-June has to offer us. And it'll be interesting to check back in after the 15th and see kind of what's happened and how Bitcoin rides whatever storm is coming for us. But until then, stay safe and peace, love, and Bitcoin.